If you're watching this, you're interested in potentially starting a franchise. And so if you're a business owner, typically the conversation is, well, does it make more sense for me just to open up another location? Or is it time to actually franchise? I can help with that. So I'm going to focus on where I'm based because the rules and regulations, as far as having to comply with not only state law, but federal law, it's going to be different per state. Now, for Arizona in particular, this is where I have expertise. This is where my law firm is located. And the great news is that for someone who's like, hey, I want to start a franchise, typically you're looking at an investment of something like 250,000 US dollars. It's a big investment. But in Arizona, you can get away with something more like $10,000 to $20,000 on average. And here's the reason why. If you are starting a franchise in the state of Arizona, the requirements are a lot less stringent than other states. Okay, there are essentially two main documents that you have to have. One of them is required by federal law, the other one is just to protect your ass. And then there's also going to be a third piece of this, but the two documents that we're going to go through, we'll start with first being the franchise disclosure document. Now, this document is not only required federally, but in this document, there are 23 different sections that you are required to have. So in your FDD, your franchise disclosure document, this is a very comprehensive document that is sent to your potential franchisees, but they also sign it because it has all your disclosures in it. What are your fees? What are the requirements? What do they have to comply with? What's the business model? What are the potential risks? So this is a very robust document. It takes a while to draft, but if you have a good franchise attorney who's working with you, they should be sending you, at least for us, we have like a proprietary questionnaire that we'll send you, which kind of goes through everything that we need from you. We make it very easy breezy. So then once you have your FDD in place, great, we check that off the list. The second agreement that comes into place, right, the contract now is your actual franchisee agreement, or otherwise just the franchise agreement. This is the document that controls the relationship between you and the particular franchisee. Because obviously, you can have different terms for different franchisees depending on who you're working with. So, the last time my law firm did one of these deals, we were working with a beauty related business. Okay, and we're franchising here in Arizona. And so when we are talking with the franchisees, sometimes there's just different relationships, right? Maybe someone wants to buy into the franchise, they're excited about the brand. Sometimes it's someone that we actually know, right? It's a family member, it's a friend. And so, sometimes we're going to waive certain fees and there will be different terms depending on who the franchisee is. Now, as far as negotiating the franchise agreement, there are things that you just need to kind of have in the back of your mind. And I wanted to drop you a couple of things so that if you're looking at this, you're considering doing this, here are some things you kind of need to think about. So the first has to do with all of your fees. Typically, there's going to be an initial franchise fee. So it's going to be, if I'm wanting to buy into your franchise, I want to start my own location. What does it cost for me to buy in for the first time? And so for you, that might be a couple $1,000s. It might be more than that. It really depends. Talk to, of course, your franchise attorney. But then there's the annual franchise fee that's reoccurring. So then what is that amount that is reoccurring every single month? So essentially for the benefit of being a franchisee, and then also, being able to use the trademark, being able to use the brand, especially for the client that we were just recently working with. They have a very, very established, loved brand that has a ton of goodwill, a ton of Google reviews. I mean, they're doing really well in our state. And so it's the benefit of essentially having that name and operating as such. The other thing you want to think about also is the royalty. So the royalty is going to be me as a franchisee of all of the profits that I make per year, and we might devise this as quarterly payments and they might be monthly payments, but of the revenue that comes in, you should be getting a percentage. And it depends on how you want to structure this, but for example, you might consider having a percentage between 5% going up to 10%. And all of this should absolutely be in your franchise agreement. When it comes to the actual use of your trademark, please get your trademark registered at the federal level and do this as soon as possible. But B, in your franchise agreement, please make sure that you have terms talking about use of the name and logo, right? If you have a particular way that you have designed your logo, it should say in your franchise agreement, don't redo my logo. You have to use the logo as exactly provided to you. Don't change the colors. Don't change the spelling. You would think this is pretty intuitive, but you really want to make sure that it's outlined and agreed to. We have the franchise disclosure document. We have the franchise agreement. The third essential document, not required, But essential is your operations manual. So this is the thing, like, how are you going to talk to your franchisees and tell them all of your rules and regulations and policies? You do it through an operations manual. And so here are some of the things that you kind of should think about as far as what goes into this. But again, your franchise attorney should be able to help you with this. But it's your training program. When you onboard someone new, and again, this is through your franchisee, which is their own company. It's not your company, but when they're onboarding new people who are going to represent your company, what's the training? What are staff guidelines? What kind of policies do you have in place? Now, the policies in general are going to really help not only your franchisee, but assist in making sure that they are set up for success. So you don't have kind of, blowback from potential lawsuits. Someone got hurt, someone broke their leg in this particular establishment. You never know. And so now they're suing you because guess what? Your name's on the building, not the franchisee's LLC, which is actually what's contracted for. What we do is we build in policies to the operations manual for things like non discrimination, sexual harassment, social media policies. So, as much information and detail that we can provide to the franchisees, the better communication there is, the better follow through there is, and the happier that everyone is going to be all around. And then, even as an add on, having things like vendors, right? So, if your franchisee needs to go and hire a graphic designer, a merchant of some kind. If you have relationships already set up and great, discounted prices, provide all that information to your franchisee. So the operations manual is really, really important to just ensuring that the overall brand and the quality of what you've built is maintained by your franchisees. So, having a franchise attorney is not only important for the initial setup stuff, going through, drafting those documents, also negotiating them with the franchisees, but complying with federal regulations, and then, of course, resolving disputes. So at some point, there might be a problem, right? We've seen where a franchisee may default on their lease, and so they aren't paying. They now are in default. They get kicked out. They then default on the agreement with you. So you need to have a procedure in place for how to deal with these situations, including, you're now not getting paid. So how are we going to manage this? How are we going to make sure that everyone hopefully gets back on track? Other than that, IP protection, we want to make sure we're protecting your trademarks, your copyright. Again, a lot of that comes with the documents themselves, but also on the tail end, it's enforcement and making sure that you are dealing with problems when they come up. So, if you need help with your franchise and getting started specifically in Arizona, you can contact Delgado Entertainment Law. We do free case evaluations and we'll see how we can help.